worst thing you can do is allow someone to tell you what you can't do. If God speaks to you and gives you your next steps, don't listen to everyone else.
Hey, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you don't know me, I'm Tanaya. And yeah, I'm going to get into the content. So I wanted to do this video about governmentjobs.com and not skipping this important step because I feel like there are a lot of people that skip it and really don't understand how crucial it is. And especially when you're applying to governmentjobs.com, realizing that it's not like the normal sites like Indeed, or if you go to a company's website, they just have different requirements. And sometimes they only want your resume when you go to Indeed or the different company websites. And they don't really require you to answer any questions. They'll look over your resume and then they'll tell you to come in for an interview. I think it's important to recognize that governmentjobs.com is a website for people that are looking for purposeful careers within the county, the government. And so there could be, you could be working for like a county office. A lot of times school districts will post on here, sheriff stations. I mean, it really just depends and it varies. I landed a job as a human resources assistant through governmentjobs.com. And so while I worked for the school district at that time, I had to screen applications and also go through appraisal questions. And I'll explain what that is in a little bit. And so I kind of have like an idea of what they're looking for. And then also it just helps me better prepare my clients for their job search. Now, I pulled up two job descriptions here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. A lot of times when people are going on governmentjobs.com, they may just submit their resume and then answer some questions, but I don't really think that people understand how important it is to answer the questions in detail, just like they're asking, and to be very specific and like make sure that you're speaking to the role. And so if you look here, this is the liability claims representative position. Now, when you open up you click on the job search, you'll see that it has the listing closing date, and then you can actually scroll down. Do you see where it says description and benefits? And then questions. So you actually can click on the questions to see when you get ready to submit your application, what are some of the questions that they're going to ask you. Now, these are what at the time, I don't know if they're still called this now, but when I worked in human resources, they were called appraisal questions. And this is actually an important part of your job application. And the reason being is because this is how HR determines if they're going to move you forward in the process or if they're going to reject your application. And so a lot of people, they might not think anything of it. They may just skim through it. They may not even take it seriously. But this part right here, your resume is not enough. You have to make sure that you are answering these questions to show them how you meet the requirements of their job description. Now, with this particular job, it gives you basically like multiple choice questions, yeah. And so you can check all that apply. And so whatever applies to you, you want to make sure that you're showing them I'm the right person for this position. Don't lie, but also make sure that you're being honest, that you're actually considering your experience and your transferable skills when it comes to this position. So this is one where I feel like it's pretty straightforward. It'll ask you training, indicate your professional insurance training, and then you can just answer it based on your experience level. And then it asks law enforcement, indicate your experience, check all that apply. I have experience adjusting litigated claims involving law enforcement organizations. So I feel like this is pretty standard, straightforward. But the other one that I wanted to pull up, just to give you a different example, is the Child Welfare Services Manager, because this actually, it goes into, do you have possess a master's degree or higher? Now, it's for me, if you look at the job description and you look at the details, then you can see if they're requiring for you, like what education they're requiring. For this, they are requiring you to have a master's degree in social work, human services, clinical psychology, or counseling with an emphasis in marriage, family, and child psychology. So in my mind, I would say if you apply for this and you had just a bachelor's degree, this would be a this would be something that would ultimately disqualify you from this position because you don't meet the education requirement. Because it says you have to have 2 years of full-time experience equivalent to supervising social service practitioner in San Bernardino County, which includes supervising professional level employees in a social work or related agency. And it's highlighting and the education portion. And sometimes what we have a tendency to do is in our mind, we think, okay, well, I might have 8 years of experience supervising service practitioner, and then, but I don't have a master's, but you probably need a master's anyway for it. But I'm just saying, like, I'm just giving you an example because this doesn't necessarily have to be supervising social service practitioner. You can think of anything where it says, okay, we want you to have 2 years of experience equivalent to whatever your industry is. And then we want you to have an education master's degree in level. And so sometimes it will say, that, okay, we will substitute the years of experience if you have a higher degree. Now, the thing you want to look out for is I'm not saying you necessarily have to just eliminate the job application altogether if you don't meet the minimum requirements, but I am saying that that is going to be a factor in determining if they're going to move you forward. So if you have the 8 years of experience, but maybe you don't have the degree requirement, you can apply, or you can probably call them and ask, is that a necessity? You can still apply, but I just think that don't necessarily expect the callback because that is how they filter through the jobs. Now, a lot of times what I've seen is, okay, they wanted the education requirements and maybe they just wanted you to have an associate's degree, right? But you have experience and maybe you do have 8 years of experience or excuse me, you have your experience is probably like 1 year. And then you have education, though, you have a master's degree, and they only wanted you to have an associate's degree. So I would say definitely apply for it. If it's something that you feel like you can do and your education really lines up with it. And, even though you have the 1 year experience, like you feel like it really lines up with it, apply for it. But just make sure that when you're answering let me go back to the question. Just make sure when you're answering these questions that you are really showing how you meet the requirement. Do you possess a master's degree or higher? Yes. And then here you see it gives you the option for other. And if other in the question above, provide the degree major. So you can do that there. And then it starts to get into open-ended questions where it says, describe your experience as a regular ongoing supervisor or manager, not as a backup to professional staff in a social work agency. Include information regarding the number and level of positions supervised, including second level subordinates, must specify job titles of staff and your scope of responsibility for hiring, writing performance evaluations, and handling disciplinary matters in social work agency. Be sure to describe any experience in the support, development, and growth of staff. Now, some may see this question and say, you know what, my resume is highlighting all of this information, so I'm going to put see resume, or I'm going to just vaguely explain it and I'm not going to go into great detail. Do not do that. If you have a question where they're asking you specific and they're saying, describe this, you've got to break it down, and you need to make sure that you're hitting every single point that they're asking for and that you're not being vague, but you're thoroughly explaining how you meet this requirement. You're describing the experience that they're asking for. And I know it might be tiresome, but what I would do is I would look at the closing date and it has this one opened on April 13th, and I don't see a closing date on here. Let me go back to the description. Okay, so I don't see a closing date on here, but a lot of them will have a closing date. So what I would say is that you look at the closing date and then copy and paste these questions into like a Word document and take time to really think about what you want to put on here, how you want to highlight your experience, and don't just copy and paste from your resume, but really explain to them the experience that you have. Make sure that you use Grammarly so that way you can copy and paste in there and make sure that your grammar's on point. There's no spelling issues. And then even if you need, I would even say, even if you need to use Chat GPT, not to create your answers, right? Because I feel like people can tell now. But even if you just want to put it in there and say, okay, does this explanation answer this question? And that way you can know if it's really in depth and it answers the question. And so that is my advice for you, to make sure that you are really doing a thorough job on your application and you do not skip this step, because this could be the difference between you will not you, but your application getting rejected and you getting that call back. So definitely stay focused and make sure that you are answering these questions thoroughly. All right, God bless.